Wouldn't you know it, we get the lighting figured out on the third and final video that we are filming today, but that is just my luck. Hello, thanks for coming back to check out another video. So we are here today to do our very next installment to the Project Level Up Project Pan. So yes, this is the third video that you are seeing, but this eye look was just too good to put to waste. So I'm super excited. If you are unfamiliar with Project Level Up, this was something that was started way back in January of this year, January 2022, by Sofie Alexandra. I always make sure to have her linked down in my description box. The whole idea of this project pan is it's kind of a combination of pan those eyeshadows and no pan left behind. So some of us are randomizing a palette, some of us are not, and that is completely fine too. Either way that you want to do it, but I have been randomizing a palette. So the idea is that you would randomize your palette. So if it's your level 1 palette, you have to use every eyeshadow in there one time and hit pan on one shade. Level 2, use every shade 2 times, hit pan on 2 shades. Level 3, level 4, I think you see the theme here. I have decided to go up to level 5, complete level 5, and then reset myself back down to level 1. So we have currently been working on level 4, which was the BH Cosmetics Emerald for May palette, as well as level 5, which was the Heather Austin collab palette with Adept Cosmetics. I've greatly enjoyed working on both of these palettes, and I am excited to tell you today that a palette is rolling out. So without any further rambling, let's get on into this. If I have failed to mention anything, please check the description box because that is where I tend to put a lot of good information for you, as well as a usage breakdown of all the shades and everything like that. Okay, so the first palette we will talk about is the Emerald for May palette, which comes from the BH Cosmetics Birthstone line that they did last year. So I think the ring light is going to wash everything out a little bit. I'm going to insert like a close-up clip of this palette as I talk to you guys about it. Now, if I'm not mistaken, last update that we had, I only had one pan of eyeshadow within this palette. That was the Stubborn shade, which is the darker burgundy shade. It really makes for a great outer like corner shade in my opinion. So I needed to still use some of the shadows 4 times. Like I don't think I'd hit that goal on the Emerald shade, which is the bigger pan of eyeshadow, or the Hard Worker shade, which is that darker brown shimmer shade. So I still needed to do that. And then I also needed to hit 3 new pans of eyeshadow in this because it is my level 4. So I needed 4 pans of eyeshadow. Hopefully you can tell in the close-up, we have managed to do that. We now have 4 pans in this palette. So I have pan in the Total Package shade, which is the lightest shimmer shade within this palette. I have pan in the Restless shade, which is the matte army green shade. And then I also have pan in the darker green shimmer shade, which is Artsy AF. I really thought that within this palette, I would hit pan in the Emerald shade here, the biggest shade, simply because that is just a really pretty stunning green shade. But there was something about this Artsy AF shade that just called to my heart on like a different level. And I really did enjoy using that. The Total Package shade, the lightest shimmer shade, I didn't really enjoy that as an all over the lid shade. I typically use that as an inner corner highlight shade. So that is how I was able to hit pan on that. And then the Restless shade, the matte army green, I just, you know, I really love greens and I love matte army greens like that. And that shadow in particular paired really nicely, not only with the Heather Austin palette, that is our level 5 palette, but with other things in my collection that I was currently working on at the time. So I'm really happy to now have 4 pans in this palette. This palette has gotten a ton of use. All of the other shadows have met the 4 uses requirements that I needed. So really that was just the Hard Worker shade and the Emerald shade. Again, I ignore the pressed glitter within this palette because I don't want to put that anywhere near my eyes, and it doesn't really work out for me as a nail polish. So anytime one of these Birthstone palettes or any palette that has a pressed glitter and it gets rolled into this project pan, I'm just going to choose to ignore it. So with all of that being said, we have completed level 4. I'm really excited about that. So now we can transition in and work or talk about our level 5 palette. So like I said, that is the Adept Cosmetics Heather Austin palette that she came out with this year in collaboration with them. So the goal with this is to use every eyeshadow 5 times as well as hit pan on 5 shades. I don't think we had any of those goals met by the last update. So what I would like to direct your attention to right off the bat is that I do have one new pan in this palette. It is in the shade Passport. That is absolutely one of my favorite eyeshadows within this palette. It is just so stunning, so pretty to wear. It is a like shifty shade, like a duochrome. It goes from like a purple to like a blue, and then it has like a little bit of mintiness to it too, depending on what you pair it with. It has just been so fun to wear, so fun to play with. I will say I was a little bit shocked. I think I only had to use that Passport shade like 6-ish times. Again, a usage breakdown is in the description box in case you guys are curious about that. Yeah, it did not take a lot of effort to hit pan in the shimmer shadows within this palette. And I think part of that is because one, the depth of these pans is quite shallow. I'm sure you can tell in the like close-up clip. But also the shimmer formula in this palette is on that like squishy side. So think like a ColourPop Super Shock shadow. Now it's not as squishy as a Super Shock shadow, but it's definitely very putty-like in the texture. I do think that they perform really nicely. You can use your finger or a brush with them. I am never successful using a brush with the Super Shock shadows, so I feel like the formulation of this is a bit better. But yeah, I think that's why I was able to hit pan so quickly. So quite honestly, with this level 5 palette, probably what I'm going to end up doing is hitting pan in 5 of the shimmer shadows. I do really enjoy the matte shadows within this palette. This darker matte shade PaO2 down here, which is like the burgundy purple, has gotten the most use out of this palette as a whole, but I can't even see like a dip or a dent in that shade. Now this is a shadow that I typically use as an outer corner shade, so I'm not using as much of it as something like a transition shade. So think like the Atlas shade, the brown here. But even Atlas and Mythology, which Mythology is the lighter like kind of yellow green shade, those two are shades that I would use in my crease, and I have used them in my crease, so I essentially use more product of them. I don't even notice a dip in those two shadows either. The matte formula of Adept is like super tightly pressed. You do not get a lot of powder kick up, which I do enjoy, like I do appreciate. I don't feel like I'm wasting any product with them. So yeah, as far as goals with this palette, have pan on the Passport shade. I don't think I have used any shade the 5 times other than the PaO2 shade, so I definitely need to kick up my usages on this palette. But for pans, I think that I would like to hit pan on the Austin shade down here, which is this really pretty shadow, and I have some pictures to show you guys. It's a shifty shade, like it is a multi-chrome, and I always think that it goes from like blue to green, like has a lot of mintiness to it. So I paired it with some blue shades, and it very much had that minty look, but I also paired it with some peachy orangey shades, and it took on a peachy orange look to it. It's really interesting, really unique. So I think I'm going to try to hit pan on that one. I really love the 0603 shade and the Hey Y'all shade. Those are on the more neutral side. They're not really shifty. The 0603 shade definitely has some blue glitters to it, which are quite lovely. So I really do enjoy those. That would give us 4 pans in total. And I don't know what other shadow I would like to try to hit pan on, because out of what's in this palette, other than Passport, because we've already hit pan on that, the 0603, the Hey Y'all, and the Austin are just shadows that I really enjoy and I really gravitate towards within this palette. So I don't have like another like it sticks out as like a standout favorite shade. Maybe the Scrubs eyeshadow, because that is also a duochrome. It goes from a purple to a blue shade. But yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at with this palette. Really enjoying playing around with this. This was my first experience with Adept Cosmetics, and I do have to say I really do enjoy this formula. All right, so let's talk about some eyeshadow looks. So the first one that I'm gonna pop up over here as I scoot over, this is the one where I was talking about, where I used the Austin shade and I paired it with a bunch of blue eyeshadows. Mainly, they came from the Club Nebula palette, and Austin retained a lot of that like blue-green mintiness. As you can see, it is my lid shade. It is all over my lid. The darker blue is the Enigma shade from the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. And then, like I said, those lighter blues are from the Club Nebula palette. So it was a really pretty eye look, really enjoyed it. This was the first eye look that I did with the Austin shade. And so I really thought, again, that just kind of reiterated that this is a shifty blue-green kind of minty shade. But now the next picture that I will pop up for you guys, again, The Austin shade from the Heather Austin palette is what is on my lids, but I have paired it with more peaches and purples. So I have some of the shadows that are in my pan, those eyeshadows, the WeHo and the Half Full shade. One is a peachy pastel shade and one is like a matte orange shade. And then I have the PaO2, which is that darker purple shade in the outer corner. And you can see Austin is my lid shade in this look as well. And it is so different from that first picture that I showed you. That peachiness does not come across when I look at that pan, or like when I try to get the shift to it. So I just thought that was really interesting, really surprising. It's definitely made Austin like a more favorite shadow within that palette, simply because it really depends on what you pair it with. So I feel like the creativity with it, like the inspiration that you can do with the Austin shade is just like, there's just so much, you know what I mean? Okay, so the third look that I will show you guys, I just absolutely love this look. This gave me such fall vibes. So I used, again, some of those oranges that are in my pan, those eyeshadows, as well as the PaO2 shade from the Heather Austin palette and the Video Chat shade from that same palette. Now, Video Chat is a shadow that kind of intimidates me. It very much has a lot of oranginess to it, but it shifts to like a yellow and then like a green. And so I kind of struggle on what to pair it with, but I really did like pairing it with these shadows. And this also incorporates a lot of the shadows from the BH Cosmetics Emerald for May palette. So I have the Restless shade, which is the matte army green. That's kind of what I use to help blend out and like make my outer corner take on a little bit more greenness to it. And then I also have the Artsy AF and the Total Package shade. So I really just faded, like Total Package was the inner corner, then it faded to the Video Chat, then it faded to the Artsy AF shade. This is an eyeshadow look that I can see myself repeating again, like pulling back out my Emerald for May palette, especially as we get closer to fall. Like, it was just so pretty. Okay, then the last eyeshadow look I will show you guys. This one uses mostly the Emerald for May palette, and I did do this look quite a few times. This is how I was able to hit pan on all the shades that I did. I also pulled out my ColourPop Limoncello palette, but I do not remember what shades I used from Limoncello, so for that I do apologize, because I do like to leave the shade names on the pictures for you guys in case you were like inspired and you want to play around and put these colors together for yourself. But either way, like I said, I did this look a lot. This was also a look that was fairly similar to a look I showed you in the last update video, I'm pretty sure. It's so easy for me to combine greens and yellows together and make just such a pretty look. It's one of my comfort zone like things, you know, like comfort zone color pairings. So I did do that a lot. Okay, so now that we have talked about our level 4, level 5, rolling out level 4, we are still working on level 5. And we've done our looks, we can talk about level 1. So we get to reset ourselves. Like, we are almost, like, as soon as I meet all my goals on the Heather Austin palette, like, we will have completed a whole chunk of this project pan. Really exciting to say, especially because I feel like it's only like July, and I really thought that I wouldn't be at this point yet. Does that make sense? Either way, I know typically I do randomize the palettes that I am working on, and I still like to do that, and I still want to do that. However, I had so much fun bringing you guys palette options for level 5 because you guys voted, and that's why I'm working on the Heather Austin palette. So I thought that would be really fun to do again for level 1, especially because I have some larger eyeshadow palettes in my collection, and I do want them to be featured in this project pan. And that's kind of like my soft goal, is to work on every eyeshadow palette within my collection in this project pan. But either way, I don't want to roll these larger palettes in for like levels 3, 4, and 5. Like, they really make sense for levels 1 and 2. So I thought if I bring you 3 palette options for level 1, you guys can vote just like we did with level 5. And then that still retains some of the randomness of the style of this project pan for me, because I don't, like, I'm bringing you 3 palettes, but I don't really have a say in which one. You know what I mean? So I'll show you all 3 of the palettes that we are thinking about. I will not swatch these out within this video because they are just so large. Whichever palette wins out, I will swatch out for you in the next video. And I would say this video is probably going to go live on July 3rd. So I would say voting will be closed, let's say on the I don't know if well, we'll just say if this is going up on July 3rd, I will try to put up the next update around August 3rd. So we will close the voting at the end of July on the 31st. That way I have time to film it. Because also now that I'm starting Pan That Palette, I think you've already seen that video go up. If you haven't, I'll link it. But now that I'm starting Pan That Palette, I also want to take this project and lessen it a little bit. So instead of working on 2 palettes at a time, I'm only going to work on 1 palette. I think that by the next update, I can have the Heather Austin palette, like all the goals met on that. So then we'll just transition into the level 1 palette is what I'm trying to say. Hopefully all of that made sense. I feel like sometimes I tune myself out talking. But either way, the 3 options for our level 1 palette will be the Lorac Mega Pro 1 is a solid option, I think. So this is a 32 pan palette, if I'm not mistaken. But now 2 of the shadows in here did come to me like busted out. So I only have 30 eyeshadows within this palette. I will bring this in for you guys. Hopefully you can see this is just a very neutral, warm color story. I will not be trying to hit pan in any of these matte cream shades, okay? However, I do know if this is the palette that gets picked for level 1, I really do enjoy this opal shade here, which is very much a white gold kind of shade, and I absolutely love the Merlot shade. I love pairing them together. I could really see that even though this is the level 1 palette, I would hit more than just 1 pan within this palette if this is what ends up being chosen. All right, so then our next option is the Glamlight Michaela palette. Now there's 2 reasons that I would like to bring this in and open this up for the voting. So one, I absolutely love this palette. Like I use this almost like every day in some way. Like I come to this so often to use either 1 or 2 shades from. Like in today's eye look, I've definitely used this MJ shade, which is the lighter pastel purple within this palette. But either way, the other reason I want to bring this in, I just saw Danny's update for, I will leave the video linked in my description box. This is one of her eyeshadow panning projects. She was working on a Glamlight shade, and she said that it took her only 6 uses, I think, to hit pan on the shadow. And so I'm just like kind of curious, like how many uses would it take me to hit pan on a Glamlight shadow? Like I've never done it before. So I feel like this is a good way to try it out. Again, really love the color story of this palette. It's just got so many colors. I have not dipped into every single shade of this palette, so I'm excited to do that too. But of the ones that I have used, I've greatly enjoyed them. I really like the formula in this Glamlight palette, and I just feel like this would be a lot of fun to play around with as well. Okay, so the third and final palette that you could vote on to be our level 1 palette is my biggest eyeshadow palette. I would not work on this palette in any other spot but level 1 because it has 45 eyeshadows. Who let me purchase a palette with 45 eyeshadows? Okay, so it is the Carnival 4 palette, the Antidote palette that Stacey Marie did in collaboration with Be Perfect. Like, it's so big I can barely like fit it in frame. So I picked this up as a bundle set with the Carnival 3 palette. I don't regret that decision. Like I really do enjoy both of these, the color story and everything like that from them. This is such a great like grungy fall toned kind of color story. These are just all up Haley's alley. Like I'm pretty sure you can tell why this had such a hold on my heart. But yeah, 45 shades. We will be working on level 1 for quite some time. I don't know if I've already said it because again, I'm tuning myself out. But yeah, I would not work on this palette in any other slot other than 1 just because there is 45 shades. And I honestly think that this would take like a month or 2 to get through. But I really do want to play around with this palette and give it like a really good shot. You know what I mean? Like really put some of this to the use, because even though the goal would be to only use every shadow once, I know that there are probably some shadows in here that I would dip into multiple times and then again hit pan on at least 1 shade. So yeah, that wraps it up for this video. I thank you so much for putting your input in down below. I thank you for making it through to the whole thing. I hope you're having a good day, a good night, or a good whatever, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.